They always said deep space assignments were for loners, the kind who preferred the silence of stars over the noise of civilization. Maybe they were right. I've been a surveyor on the Vigilant Horizon for nearly 9 years, long enough that Earth is more memory than home. Our job is simple in theory. Scout old expansion routes, check on abandoned stations, log anomalies, and report. We don't interfere. We're not explorers. We're custodians of forgotten paths. The universe is mostly dead silence, and most days we're grateful for that, until yesterday. It came as a whisper through the dark. No, not even that. More like static dreaming of a voice. A signal, ancient and broken, pinging from somewhere off-grid. It crackled across our long-range array just past the Eltanan Drift, a sector we'd marked as sterile over 100 years ago. There shouldn't have been anything there. No ships, no relays, and certainly no colonies. But there it was, an intermittent transmission, fragmented, distorted. A looping piece of music, Earth music unmistakably, but layered with garbled bursts, digital glitches, and something beneath it all that sounded almost like clicking, rhythmic, purposeful. I analyzed the waveform 3 times. It wasn't random. Captain Torres rerouted us without hesitation. Curiosity has a gravity all its own. The system had no official designation, just a reference code, HR317VX. The last note in our archive dated back to the early expansion, one of hundreds of colony attempts launched before the Foldgate network stabilized. The logs called it Carthus. Founded, abandoned, forgotten. No final transmissions. No reports of disaster. Just silence. Until now. As we dropped into orbit, the planet looked oddly serene. Blue-green with wide oceans and mountain-shadowed, continents wrapped in cloud systems that moved just a little too slow, as if hesitating between moments. From above, we spotted the remains of what was once a proud colony. 6 domed structures, partially sunken into the soil, surrounded by crumbling solar spires and collapsed aerial tethers. But some of the lights were still on. That was the first red flag. After 3 centuries of abandonment, no human tech should still be functional. Batteries die, solar panels degrade, systems rot. But here, faint orange glows blinked gently from beneath the overgrowth, like eyes waiting to be noticed. Torres ran a full scan. No life signs, no radio signals beyond the corrupted loop. And yet the colony was drawing power from somewhere, and emitting faint bursts of radiation that didn't match any known energy signature. "What the hell is this?" Reyes murmured, watching the scanner. "Ghost power?" We joked. We always joked. That's how we made it through the dead places. But I noticed something the moment we locked into low orbit, a tension behind my eyes, like a pressure change but internal. I chalked it up to fatigue. That would become my first mistake. Our team consisted of 5, Captain Torres, pilot, and field commander. Reyes, our biologist, Dr. Sen, our systems engineer, Haley, security and weapons, and me, Ensign Carter, surveyor and primary recorder. We loaded up a small lander and made for the surface, touching down a half-click from the colony perimeter. The moment we broke atmo, the air felt thick. Not hot, not humid, just dense in a way that pressed against the skin like being submerged. The breeze carried a faint electric tang, like the moments before a thunderstorm. Still, readings showed the atmosphere was stable and breathable. No contaminants. No pathogens, just old air and quiet dust. When the hatch opened, it was like stepping into a mausoleum. Silence, absolute and unwavering. No birds, no wind. The only sound came from our suits. Soft clicks of motion, the hiss of filters, the occasional radio chirp. The colony structures loomed ahead, their domes dulled by time, half buried by creeping vegetation. The metal supports were rusted, but the framework held strong. Whatever they built this place with, it endured. The pathways between buildings were oddly clean. No wreckage, no debris. as if someone had swept them recently. That should have been the second red flag. Reyes knelt by a vine crawling across the pavement. "These aren't native to Earth," she said, "but they're definitely from a terrestrial seed stock. Same genus as kudzu, engineered for aggressive terraforming." "And yet," Torres said, scanning the colony. "The place looks abandoned," Sene chimed in. "Some of these systems are still drawing current, but I can't trace the source. It's like they're pulling power from beneath the surface." That's when I started noticing the dust, or rather the lack of it. Inside the buildings, particularly near the command dome, certain areas were completely dust-free. Not just clean, but untouched, pristine, as if time had skipped over them entirely. Computer terminals sat dormant, but their screens flickered faintly when approached. I waved a hand near one. Its screen blinked to life for half a second, displaying a corrupted interface with rapidly scrolling symbols I didn't recognize. Then it went dark. We entered what had once been a cafeteria, tables and chairs still, in place, some meals still sealed in nutrient packs. I picked one up and checked the expiration. It had a date that didn't make sense. 3/24/36. We all froze. That's over a decade after the colony supposedly went silent. "How the hell?" Haley muttered. "No, that's not right," Torres said, voice hard. "Could be a glitch, maybe a bad batch." But the creeping dread started then, like a worm behind my ribs. This place hadn't just died quietly. It had waited. Reyes paused near the edge of the cafeteria window. "I saw something." We all turned. "Movement," she said. "Just outside. I thought it was a person, but..." We rushed out. Nothing. Just the long shadow of our lander stretching impossibly across the clearing as the sun dipped low. But I swear I saw it too, just for a second. Something. Darting past the edge of the nearest dome. Too fast. Too fluid. Almost like it knew. We'd seen it and wanted to disappear. We stayed that night in the colony's main structure. It was the first night we regretted coming. I didn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because I felt watched. No, not watched. Observed. As if something was analyzing every breath, every thought from behind the walls, and the pressure in my head hadn't gone away. If anything, it was getting worse. We resumed our exploration at first light, or whatever passed for morning, on Carthus. The sun rose heavy and red through a thick haze, casting long shadows that bled into one another. The colony, half alive and half dead, felt like a thing caught between two dreams. Captain Torres split us into pairs. Reyes and Haley would scout the agricultural domes while Sen and I focused on the central hub, the command structure. Even stepping through the door to that building felt wrong. The air inside was still, not stale but not fresh either. Like it had been waiting. The lights flickered dimly overhead, occasionally stuttering in sync with something we couldn't identify. Power was being drawn, but not from anything our instruments recognized. Sen frowned constantly, muttering to herself as she checked power conduits and interface panels. "This whole system's bastardized," she said. "Someone retrofitted it or something did. Look at this wiring, it's not even standard expansion kit." We moved through hallways coated with fine silt like lunar dust, but again, certain areas were perfectly clean. Not swept, not vacuumed. Just untouched. One corridor leading to what looked like an operations room was immaculate, like no time had passed there at all. The floor gleamed. The air was warmer, as if that section was still in use. The operations room was eerie in its perfection. Chairs neatly pushed in, monitors dead, but warm to the touch. I passed my hand across one and it blinked on, scrolling. Ancient diagnostic code, mostly gibberish, but one date kept repeating across multiple lines of corrupted log files. April 10th, 2325. Sen saw it too. We didn't speak. That was exactly 300 years ago. Today. Not about 3 centuries. Not an approximation. Exact to the day. I backed away from the terminal. The pressure in my skull, which had subsided slightly during the night, flared. Again, sharp and centralized, like something inside me recognized that date and didn't like it. I opened my mouth to speak, but my voice came out delayed in my own ears, like it had to travel a long way before reaching me. We continued deeper, passing more rooms where time seemed to skip. In one storage bay, a metal shelf held a clipboard with printed logs, the paper somehow unyellowed, still crisp. Sen lifted it carefully and flipped through. The notes ended mid-sentence. Observed new fluctuation in atmospheric. Then, nothing. As if someone had dropped the pen and walked away, or vanished. Then we found the mirror room. It was labeled Simulation Observation H Theta. A small chamber, maybe 3 by 3 meters, with walls paneled in dull chrome. At first glance, it looked like an old test room. Then we stepped inside, and the walls shimmered. At first I thought it was just our reflections, but when I raised my hand, my mirrored self hesitated. Not by much, maybe half a second, but it was enough to feel wrong. A digital delay? Sen turned, to me face pale. "It's not just you," she said. "It's lagging. That wall, it's not a mirror, it's something else." I stepped closer. My reflection looked at me, but its expression seemed subtly different, not quite matching mine. There was a delay in the blink, a slowness in the posture. As if it wasn't copying me, it was watching, then reacting. Left quickly after that. We checked in with Reyes and Haley over comms. Their signal was patchy, full of soft static. "You're not going to believe what we found," Haley said, breathless. "There's some kind of growth spreading through the ag domes. Metallic, but organic too, like vines made of wire. Pulsing," Reyes added, "and it's humming. At the same pitch as the old signal. We shut our helmets, but I still hear it." Then, faintly, over the open channel, I heard a voice, high-pitched, childlike, whispering just one word. "Carter." I froze, looked at Sen. She was still speaking to the others, oblivious. I rewound the playback on my comm. Nothing. The log didn't register the whisper. No one else heard it. But it had been in my ear, inside my name, like breath on the pool, back of the neck. We regrouped in the corridor leading toward the sublevels. Torres had located a sealed hatch beneath the command dome, labeled Biostasis Lab 2. We weren't expecting anything operational, but the hatch opened at a single tap. The lab was colder than anywhere else in the colony. Lights flickered as we stepped in, white, clinical, buzzing faintly. 6 cryopods lined the far wall. 5 were dark. The 6th wasn't. It still hummed. Soft blue lights pulsed across its interface, and inside, floating in translucent stasis gel, was a man, eyes open, mouth frozen in a rictus scream. His skin had not decayed. His hair floated gently in the fluid. He looked alive, but every instinct told me he wasn't. The pod's data display was corrupted but legible. It identified the man as Dr. Elias Rohn, cryo-experimental subject 4A. Date of entry, April 10th, 2325. Same day. Again. We tried tracing the pod's power supply. There was no connection to the colony grid, no generator, just a pulsating signal that registered as indeterminate, a frequency somewhere between radiation and biological impulse. Something was feeding the pod, something that didn't want it to shut down. I stared into Rohn's eyes. His pupils had dilated, not just from fear, from something else. Some reflection of terror so vast it had burned into him in his last conscious moment. Sen tried to speak. Her voice failed. That was when Jensen started screaming. He'd been quiet since morning, complaining of a headache worse than mine. We found him crouched in the med pod, nails torn, clawing at his arms. "They're in my skin," he shrieked, "in the walls, in the goddamn mirrors. They're walking around in me. They're looking out through my face." It took both Torres and Haley to restrain him. He bit Haley's glove. Hard. drew blood through the fabric. We sedated him and sealed him in the med pod. He cried himself into silence, muttering about reflections peeling themselves off the walls. Nobody argued when Torres called for a halt to exploration. We should have left then, but I made the mistake of closing my eyes that night. I don't know how long I slept. There was no proper day or night cycle on Carthus, just a red sun and the artificial pulses of the colony's strange systems. But in sleep, I saw things. Not dreams, places. Vast cities without people, made of ivory and steel, their streets breathing like lungs. Buildings that leaned toward me as I walked. Skies that cracked like glass to reveal something else behind them, black and infinite, with eyes like slow whirlpools. And always, from the edge of every scene I felt it, watching, waiting. Not alive in the way we understand, but present, like the shadow of a god that had never needed to be born because it had always been. When I woke, there were tears on my face. Not mine. I couldn't explain it. And I didn't try. Because I knew something was already listening. I don't remember how I got back to the surface. One moment I was falling, or maybe being pulled, and then I was stumbling through the colony's upper corridors, breath ragged in my throat, visor cracked. My suit was scorched, my hands shaking. But I was alive, I think. The hatch creaked open, and I stepped into daylight that wasn't daylight. The sky was wrong. Too deep. Too dark. The stars were foreign, unfamiliar constellations etched in a sky that pulsed faintly as if breathing. The sun, or what I assumed was the sun, was a soft red smear behind low clouds that didn't move. The Vigilant Horizon was gone, just gone. The launch site was empty. No scorch marks, no tracks, as if we'd never landed, and on the ground, black dust blew in slow spirals. Too slow. Each step I took left no footprint, except where I found their names. Jensen, Haley, Torres, Reyes. Sen each etched cleanly into the earth, spaced like headstones. No bodies, just names. And my own name, too, a little farther out, still fresh. I didn't scream. I think I'd run out of voice. The colony hub door was ajar when I returned. As I stepped inside, every screen flared to life in unison. The lights flickered. A static hum filled the air like a breath held just too long. Then, the monitors began to play. It was me. Not just a recording. Me, on the screens, walking through corridors I hadn't visited yet, describing events that hadn't happened. My voice, calm and detached, detailing the sequence of discoveries, the descent, the object, all of it, but days, maybe weeks, ahead of where I was now. I watched as I entered the command hub, looked into the camera, and began unsealing my helmet. Smiling, and I said, "You were watching this, weren't you?" The feed ended. I stumbled backward, heart slamming in my chest. Monitors shifted, playing images of the others. Of us. Of me. Looping scenes. Jensen whispering into a mirror. Torres asleep with eyes open. Sen standing still for hours, her mouth twitching in reverse speech. And always a version of me watching from just out of frame. I looked toward the nearest reflective surface, an old control panel, and saw myself. But not quite. He didn't move with me. His eyes were too wide. He was crying, another mirror. This one laughed silently, mouthing words I couldn't hear. In the third, I wasn't there at all. Just empty space, and a faint, flickering pulse. I turned from them, ran, tried to run, but every hallway looped back. The facility knew me now, knew my patterns. It showed me rooms I remembered, and others I didn't. Rooms filled with half-finished replicas of our equipment, growing from the walls like tumors. Machinery made of bone. Suits stitched together, with threads of silver nerve. I no longer remembered arriving. I no longer remembered who had sent us. And worse, I no longer remembered what Earth looked like. only that I had once dreamed it. The air was too thick. Breathing felt like swallowing time. The walls pulsed and then it spoke, not with sound. It filled me with thoughts that weren't mine. Shame, wonder, guilt, familiarity. It showed me moments I'd forgotten, not just from this mission, but from a life I no longer recognized. Times I had lied, times I had looked away, times I had failed to act. It wasn't angry, it didn't judge. It just... I knew. I collapsed in the atrium, surrounded by dim lights and screens now frozen on my own face. I couldn't tell if they were still recording, or if they ever had been. I felt hollow, fragmented. There were no answers, just layers, and within each layer, me, versions of me, choices of me, some that screamed, some that surrendered, one that still smiled. I left this recording, if it is a recording, for someone, or maybe I've always been leaving it. I don't know anymore. I think we didn't find the colony. I think it found